The Senior Rehab Project is supported by the Game Changers, a group of motivated rehab clinicians that are crushing mediocrity and advancing care for older adults. You can join this group of people and get access to the private Facebook group, the monthly meetup with article discussions, and have a say in the direction of this movement. Get off the sidelines and get involved. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/Game Changers. Hit me!
This is a Senior Rehab Podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Hey y'all, welcome to Home Health Recharge.
Home Health Recharge.
Advancing and revitalizing home health care. Today we're continuing our discussion with Celeste Cheek. But before we get to part 2, we want to talk a little bit about some OASIS tips.
OASIS tips.
Today we're going to talk about question M1400, which is the question that addresses dyspnea. This question comes up every now and then, and one of the reasons that this question is important is because it's included in a lot of the valued initiatives, which includes Home Health Compare, Home Health Star Ratings, and Value-Based Purchasing. Some of the important aspects to keep in mind when answering this question is that this is a question that should be answered on how the patient presents on the day of the assessment and 24 hours prior. Now, this can vary depending on which question you're looking at, so it's important to understand your time frame for each question. You should use a combination of observation and interview to answer this question. Two of the biggest variables on scoring this question is number 1, the patient's use of oxygen, and number 2, their modifications to their environment and activities. So let's start with oxygen use. You should score this based on the patient's use of oxygen and not the physician's order. i.e., so if the patient has oxygen prescribed as continuous, but only uses it as needed, the patient should be assessed without the oxygen. In regards to modifications of the environments or activities, if the patient modifies their activities or the environment in order to reduce their dyspnea, then you should score them appropriately with the modifications. For example, if they bring in their daily utensils closer to them in order to reduce their dyspnea, then you have to score them with those modifications. It's important to keep that in mind because this is a difference to some of the other questions and a prime example of why it can be very confusing and difficult to accurately score an OASIS without additional guidance or training. Anyway, back to the question. So the question reads on M1400, when is the patient dyspneic or noticeably short of breath? So I'm going to start with the answer demonstrating the most difficulty and work my way back down. Keep in mind that this question also has examples with some of the answers, and these are used to illustrate, but not seen as hard stops when answering the question. So let's start with number 4, and that is if the patient is short of breath at rest. And this can be during the day or the night. This one's pretty straightforward. If they demonstrate short of breath at rest without any activity during the day or the night, then they score a 4. With this question and other questions, it's important to pay attention to the ands and the ors. Number 3, are they short of breath with minimal exertion or agitation? Remember that this one, they give you some examples like while eating, talking, or performing other ADLs, but it's not an all-inclusive list. Number 2, are they short of breath with moderate exertion? Again, this one has examples that are not all-inclusive. One of the most important examples in this one is ambulation that is less than 20 feet. This is important when looking at the next answer, which is number 1. Is the patient short of breath when walking more than 20 feet or climbing stairs? Now, this one's a little bit more specific than the others. There isn't a maximum limit on distance with stairs, so this is where observation and report is important to keep in the context of the patient's daily life. So don't score them based on the ability to run a 5K unless they ran one that day or the day before your assessment. And finally, 0, which is the easiest of them all. The patient did not display or report being short of breath. Now remember that this is just one of the many questions in the OASIS. With each question, make sure that you use your clinical expertise and guidance to paint an accurate picture of your patient. That's your OASIS tip for this month. Now on to the discussion. How about, have you seen a change in practice with home care since you've been out there?
That's hard. I mean, I've worked with PTAs and I've been on my own. And, as a I keep calling myself a new student. I felt, just getting out of school, seeing really acute people, and vitals were not an everyday thing, but luckily I did them anyway.
Yeah.
I had to, within my first week of doing home health in Tucson, I walked in on someone having a stroke,
Ooh.
Which was kind of spooky because you're out there all on your own, especially if you're working for, PRN companies, at least then. It's changed more depending on where I've been and whether I've had assistance or not, whether I'm rural or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to note is, you're more on the west side of the country. I'm more on the east side of the country. And, there can be different cultures that, kind of come into play. Because just for instance, I know, I have experience in other states and as well, but like they've all been on the eastern side of the eastern to Midwest. And, some states, you see a lot more PTAs and the culture is a little bit different. And then like North Carolina, I know I don't see as many, I see some, but I don't see as many PTAs as I do in other states out there.
That's because they all come here. They are all in the West. There are a lot over here. I have learned, I give it up to PTAs. They helped me along when I got to school. There's a couple of them that had been practicing for 30-something years that held my hand when I started. So that was nice. Yeah.
Definitely don't have anything against, a PTA. I take a good PTA over a bad PT any day. So.
Yeah. So that's, and there's been different cultures. I've worked in rural Oklahoma. I've worked in Tucson, and Portland was probably the most different, I think. Well, I guess Tucson was snowbirds. Oklahoma was farmers, a lot of farmers. And that's very similar to here in Oregon, because I'm in the eastern part of Washington. So there's orchards and there's a lot of farmers, just a different kind of farming here, here in the West. And in Portland, we had a deal with the VA. So we had all of the VA patients, and in Portland itself, there were a lot. I saw homeless people, which I saw some in Oklahoma, which that's probably that's really different, seeing someone homeless in a trailer in the middle of nowhere, versus an old vet that, you have to go and see on the sidewalk, and you can really make a difference for those people.
Yeah.
But I mean, home is different things to different people depending on where you are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen some of that as well. The company I work for is a not-for-profit organization, and they take charity cases. So, these are. So I've seen someone in in the like the RVs. So I've seen that in the middle of summer in North Carolina without air conditioning.
Oh, without air conditioning, yes.
But and those are the tough ones where you're kind of bringing in, trying to bring in social work to try to get them, set up with, just get them a fan or something in the middle of the summer, because.
And 25 cats usually, right?
Oh yeah,
20 dead. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's different on the West, but when I moved, what year did I move back over here? 14, I think. And they have medical marijuana in Oregon at that point. So in Portland, and a lot of the vets, you walk in and, they have PTSD. They have all of these issues. And then moving here from Oklahoma and walking into a house where nothing is, it's just sitting out. And that was a whole different thing to get used to as well. Just very kind of mind-blowing. So literally, I'm going to step outside for a minute. There's that. So yeah, you have to be fluid and adjust.
Yeah, I think you know, as I forget who was talking about it. You know, sometimes home health gets a bad rap because we always talk about the bad things, you know, the bad homes and stuff like that. But, you know, it seems, you know, those are usually few and far between. Most homes are perfectly fine. But, you know, of course you have you know, everyone has a story. And
those are the fun ones to tell.
Most of mine are about trying to get to someone's home than it is actually once you get in. Because I know that, you know, I have a Honda Civic, and one was just a dirt road in the middle of the country that was mud, and I had to go straight up. So straight up, I just had to park at the bottom and walk up
and hike up
the hill. So, you know, there's, you know, you get all kinds of different situations, but
that's why I got all-wheel drive. I finally traded in my low car and got, after last winter that we had 1,000 feet of snow, I don't know, that makes it rough. But yeah, when I first really got immersed into home health in Tucson, I spent a lot of time on the edge of the resorts and these beautiful houses, and it's Arizona, so everybody has a pool. So my thought is, I've taken a pool class. Let's go get in the pool and do pool therapy today. I kind of missed that, you know?
Yeah.
But because everybody doesn't have a pool here.
Yeah, that's that's one good thing about home health too, is you can adapt if someone
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes you go into like a facility and they have equipment and stuff, like, oh yeah, let's go.
Yep.
Done. But, what do you see the kind of the future for home health looking like? Now we've talked about how it's changed. You got any ideas?
I was just thinking about that. As our baby boomers get older, you know, and the younger people get older and sicker, I think technology is going to come into it quite a bit more. You know, half of my patients don't use a computer, and they have a cell phone that they can't push the buttons on. But I'm starting to see that change. A lot of my patients are starting to organize on their computer, and I think telehealth is going to come in a little bit more. And, you know, I'm hoping for those people that we can't get out to as often as we'd like to, because there's a lot of good resources, I believe, and hopefully just continue to progress what we know, you know, keep looking at the evidence, because everything, you know, the more I learn, the more I find out how much I didn't know to start with. You know, everything I learned in school. I went back to get my DPT in 2013 because these students, thank you, these students were coming out, and I was working at the hospital at the time, and they were coming from the school where I went. I did not learn anything that they were learning. And I did a lot of teach myself out of a book, and I was really jealous. I went back to school, but of course, none of the course. I just wanted to retake PT school. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. 3 years of hell. It was good hell, but it was tough. I'm very thankful I did it though, because, you know, I didn't have much research. I didn't even know what evidence-based medicine was until I went back to school. I kept hearing the words being kicked around, and they just scared me to death, and I would run the other way.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was probably the best thing I've done.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's probably served you well, especially, you know, now how everything's changing, and, you know, just my 2 cents real quickly on what I see things changing is looking at, you know, how I'm in a state that has value-based purchasing. I don't know if you know much about that. It was only 12 states that had that. North Carolina was one of them.
We're one of them too.
Okay,
I believe.
So
yes.
Then you're probably vaguely familiar. You're familiar with it somewhat, then.
Yes.
So, you know, with how that's changing, and with outcomes, you know, and you know, with the APTA and their outcomes registry that they're forming and stuff. You really have to be on top of your game now when it comes to evidence-based practice, you know, to try to make improvements. And I think you know, once, you know, telehealth, telemedicine, whatever you want to call it. I think that is it's a good place that's in the future. You know, one thing that's battling is the reimbursement on it right now. But, you know, I think that has a great potential to, you know, be a visitor, a few visits in between when you go back out and see the patient, just to check up, make sure they're doing, because in home health, you don't, a lot of the time, sometimes you don't have as many visits as you would like. Not necessarily because you're limited by insurance or something like that, but, you know,
caseload and
caseload, or your patient, you know, with home health, you're battling a nurse coming, and sometimes you can over a nurse, an OT, and a speech, and you can kind of overlap the patient pretty easily if you have 4 disciplines out coming twice a week. You know, there's 8 visits a week in 5 days ish. So, you know, to have a visit or few in there in between where you can check in on them and make sure that they're progressing, and maybe bump it up a little bit, you know, somewhere in the middle when they're ready. I keep wanting
to do that now and just at least call them in between and get so wrapped up in the case management of all of them that I have found that I haven't done it. I am intentioning to, well intentioned, hasn't happened.
That's the first step.
Like. Yes. Can I just send you my thoughts? Know that I'm thinking about you.
Yeah, and I think with that too, it'll increase patient, you know, satisfaction as well. You know, it shows that you're thinking about them and you're concerned with how they're doing and just checking up on them. So
therapeutic alliance.
That's a big part. I think that's a big part of any therapist, but practice,
especially in their home.
Right. There's a different, you know, you don't really understand that until you do it, that there's a difference between them coming in to the clinic where it's your environment, or the hospital where it's your environment, as opposed to going in their home where it's their environment and they're the boss, you know.
Yeah.
You know, doing exercises around 12 cats, you know what I mean? You talk about,
or a dog trying to take your sweater off, or animals.
and just good advice with it, because I know a therapist that had this. If a cat runs across your computer while you're working, don't scare the cat, because they'll dig their claws into your keyboard and rip out the numbers. So, and then you'll have to work without numbers. So.
I put everything in my phone in the home at this point. My laptop is too bulky to get in and out of my bag. So I put it in my phone and switch it when I get home.
Yeah, I'm real used to using the computer. But I know there's a lot that use tablets. I just don't know how you would type on that. And,
I've done both. I've done the tablet. I liked it better when it was the phone with the point click care was nice, but on the phone you could do it one hand, and I'm used to texting, so
okay.
It's I love swipe. I do. I wish iPhone had swipe.
I'm sure I could get used to it, but it would just be, you know, I just think it would take me a while, but
it takes a minute. But I mean, I've done both. I don't pull the computer out as much, besides it being big and bulky and heavy. It's harder when I feel like I have a window in between me and the patient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that anyway. I take vitals, and then I work with my patient, and then write a couple things down, and then do everything afterwards.
Yeah. I think everybody has their routine. Mine's pretty similar to that. I have to, if I try to, you know, I'll probably get, some people commenting on this. I try to get about a moderate amount of documentation, in that I put the big points that I know, and then I fill in the details when I get out of the home. So like vitals, if I don't write them down initially, I'm just going to forget the numbers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
immediately. The reps, I have to write those down immediately, or I'll forget, but I try to, it's hard to do gait training and exercise instruction with a computer in your lap. So,
right.
So, there's a give and take. And I know, point of service documentation is always the most accurate. So I try to get most of it I can, but I'm also good at typing and looking at my patient straight in the eyes, while I'm talking to them. So some people aren't as good at that. So
how have you, this is because I haven't used the computer a lot, and mine is probably bigger than the one you're using. So when I have a bag and a clipboard, so they can sign stuff and I can carry papers in, and then a laptop, and you walk in and there's not really anywhere you want to sit.
Yeah.
So you probably give that place to your bag where you sit, and how do you juggle all of that? Do you come across those situations?
So when there's not a good place to put down your computer, is that kind of what you're saying?
Because it's a lot of things to juggle. I mean, between all of the equipment you've got to get in and out, and, a laptop, a clipboard, whatever.
I'd say probably the hardest cases is if you're in a close situation, kind of like if a patient, you probably see this a lot. Patients in a smaller room and they have a hospital bed in there, and you walk in and there's probably enough room just to get in.
Hang the bag on the doorknob.
Yeah, exactly. I hang the bag on the doorknob and then kind of take it out and then hold it as much as I can, then fold it and put it back in the bag is usually how.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. I have seen people that bring in the over the door hooks instead and kind of hang it up there.
That's a good idea.
On the front, because I don't even know what I need to take a class, I guess, on the parts of a book bag, but that little handle on the top of it, you can just hang that.
Yeah.
Some of the nurses keep them with them for height or hanging IV bags and stuff like that. The same kind of type that just hangs on top of the door.
I'm sorry, I just had an image of dragging around an IV pole to walk into someone's house. My car is so full of equipment. Throw an IV pole in here.
Yeah, just carry that around. This will be
fun.
Just bring it on in with you.
Hey, it's surprising what you can use.
That's one of those things in the home health. You gotta improvise as much as you can. Sometimes it's not the perfect situation. You don't have a solid, clean surface to put your computer down on and all that kind of stuff. But luckily, I don't have to deal with a lot of paper outside of admission signings and stuff like that, and signing stuff, signing forms and stuff like that. So I have the luxury of being mostly computer. It was great talking to you, Celeste, and I appreciate your point of view and just everything that you do for home health physical therapy.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
And that's it for the discussion with Celeste. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did talking to Celeste and her point of view. Thank you for joining us here on Home Health Recharge. Until next time, don't forget to stay funky.
Hit me! Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.